Today in episode 44 of the podcast, we will be discussing Toho greenlighting the next Godzilla film from the director of -1, and Marvel has announced their 2025 TV slate. We'll also be reviewing the film here and breaking down Season 1 of Agatha All Along. But I'm Brad, he's Josh, and welcome to We'll Bring the Popcorn.
Before we jump into the news this week, we want to thank everyone for your continued support, especially with last week's episode. It was by far our most viewed and most listened to episode to date. Thank you so much for that and all your continued support. Please go to our YouTube page, give us a like and a subscription, get a notification bell every time we drop new episodes on Monday. Thank you so much for that. And also, don't forget to give us a 5-star review anywhere you listen to us in the audio realm if you're not watching us on YouTube. It really helps elevate the profile of the show.
And go to willbringthepopcorn.com to find all our social medias, anywhere else, our link to our Discord. And I also want to give a big thanks for, we just hit 150 subscribers on YouTube. So, we're still climbing, still got a ways to go, but we appreciate getting to this mark because it's pretty huge for us. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Now, jumping into the news this week, we have news coming from Amazon Prime. The show Jack Ryan, which was very popular on the platform starring John Krasinski, ended last year. But now it's looking like he's going to come back, not for another season of Jack Ryan, but actually a feature film.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see that they're getting a film. But, I really love the series. I think they did a great job. John Krasinski taking a turn to do action and bringing in this Tom Clancy character that's been done so many different times. You may think that maybe they're just reusing it too much, but I thought it was a lot of fun. So it's going to be interesting to see him doing the action and doing everything on the big screen.
Yeah, I had some doubts going into the show. Like, I like John Krasinski and all, but you never know how he's going to take on a role like this. But I thought the show was really smart, really well done, really well acted. It had a lot of, good stories in the couple seasons that it was on. I had a really good time watching it. I'm excited to see what he can do in the film realm. He's really finding his legs as a director now, like going and making films like, what we did, go back in our archives and check out our review of Quiet Place Day One. He had a heavy hand in that film as well, but he's really finding his, like I said, legs as a director, and now he's, jumping back into this film role for Jack Ryan that I think he did a great job and was one of the better people to play that character, in my opinion, and I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Because they crammed a lot into the series with, small episode count and stuff, so that probably helps them a bit to be able to get the film done in a decent way. You expect maybe 2.5 hours with that, but they are looking for a theatrical release, so it's not going just straight to streaming, so it looks like they're going to release it in theater, so they have some confidence that the movie could do pretty well.
Really excited to see what they do with it. Obviously, I think you could take your time a little bit in a 2.5-hour film if that's how long it's going to be. You could tell a really cool, succinct story in that time frame, and I'm excited to see what they do with it for sure.
And another movie we're excited for that's going to be out in just a few weeks now is Lord of the Rings: The War of the Rohirrim. And this story, when I first saw it, I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to feel about it because I thought maybe it was going to involve AI or something else, because Christopher Lee, the late Christopher Lee, he played Saruman in the Lord of the Rings movies, did a fantastic job in it. He will be voicing Saruman again in that animated film because they're taking unused stuff and readings he did for The Hobbit and taking all that and bringing it into this animated film so he can reprise Saruman after that. Because at first I was like, are they going to use AI to recreate his voice and someone else is doing it, or a sound alike? But no, it's just some unused footage and audio from The Hobbit.
Which is really cool to kind of keep his memory in the role alive a little bit, because he was so iconic in that role. And it's really cool that they're not going the AI route with that, and they're taking stuff that he had actually legitimately recorded and doing that. You wonder how they're going to incorporate it into the story of, what they're telling there. I'm very excited for this movie that's coming out in a little over a month now. It's coming out before the end of the year. We're already into November. It's crazy to say that because this year feels like it's flying by, but that movie is going to be here next month, and I'm excited to dive into it, check it out, review it for the show, obviously, which we will, right after it comes out. But yeah, it was pretty cool that they decided to use that audio of him instead of, trying to use artificial intelligence to take his voice and kind of repurpose it for their story. And I'm excited to see how they incorporate Saruman into this film.
Yeah, it's going to be different just hearing his voice again and something in lines that we just haven't heard from him. So it'll be nice, but also a little different, just hearing him again is just going to be like, oh, okay. There's Christopher Lee. I missed that voice.
Absolutely. It's going to be cool to check that out for sure. We want to move on to one show that we both love and that we've been excited to see what they do next with it is The Bear. Wildly successful show. Tons of Emmy Awards they just won at the last Emmy Awards ceremony. But we get a little more information about season 4. Now, when we talked about this show last, we mentioned that they had filmed a whole bunch of episodes, but it sounded like they hadn't finished filming the season. Well, come to find out, season 4 is coming, and they've already filmed most of it.
Yeah, they say they've only got three and a half episodes left to do because, they had to fit everything in because they had a lot of actors who had a lot of other stuff going on. Of course, we got Fantastic Four being recorded, the Bruce Springsteen biopic and everything else. So, yeah, the actors kind of came out when season 3 came out like, well, we recorded a bunch of episodes and it wasn't in here, so we're not exactly sure. And then it comes to turn out, yeah, all that was for season 4. So, yeah, it's like three and a half episodes still to record. So they said they're right on track to be able to release in summer of 2025.
Which is exciting because I'm chomping at the bit to see where this show goes next. I'm absolutely hooked on it. It's quickly become one of my favorite shows. It's so well written, so smart, and I absolutely love this show. And it's wild to think of a show coming back and only filming 3.5 episodes to finish the season. Like, normally when you get in these shooting blocks, you shoot most of, if not all of the season, depending on, the length of the show. I know a lot of the traditional, 22 episode, like, network shows film a good chunk of, like, the front half of the season, take a break, and then film the rest of it. And they're almost semi kind of filming while the show is airing even. Mm-hmm. Like, it's interesting to see how episodic television is shot, but they've got most of the season in the can already, and they're only coming back for, the last couple episodes, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. The cast is all, like you said, branching off and doing all these amazing other projects, and it's hard to imagine them having the time to all come together, but they seem like they're willing to make it work, even in chunks of time like they're discussing here.
Yeah, and that's what we don't know, just how much longer The Bear has. Like, there's discussion, I think they have plans for season 5, but we really don't know how this will continue because, Eben will have Doomsday potentially and Secret Wars to record here in the next year or two, and there's a lot that's going to be going on with these actors, so we'll see just how much longer The Bear has. But it's been a fantastic series, and I am looking forward to season 4, and I think they said about February of next year is when they'll pick back up.
Yeah, which is exciting because you're ready to see where they go next. If you haven't checked out The Bear, go out of your way to watch it. You can watch it on Hulu. You can watch it if you have Disney Plus with Hulu, whatever they're bundling. If you go to FX's site, I think you can watch it there as well. Take the time to watch it. It's a really easy watch because the episodes are only about 30 minutes each. They're not significantly long episodes. A couple of them are close to an hour because of the longer like season finale type episodes, and season premiere episodes are a little bit longer usually, but it's a pretty easy watch, and it's one definitely worth watching.
So parody films were huge in the 90s and early 2000s stuff, but we haven't had a whole lot of them lately. But we're looking like we're getting Scary Movie 6 now after quite a few years, but it's been 15, 20 years since the Wayans brothers had anything to do with that series. But they're reuniting to bring us another film, so it's going to be interesting to see having them back together and doing another parody film. How does it kind of work in this day and age? Because like I said, we just haven't had that many parody films lately.
What's really cool about these movies now is that the Wayans brothers are kind of taking it back under themselves creatively, which is exciting because, they were so integral in, making those films successful that they're getting the reins of the film to kind of do what they want, which is exciting because, it's been so long since one of these movies have come out, and there's so many new horror films that they could parody and poke fun at. And one of the things that's really fun is those two are like complete opposite ends of the spectrum cinematic wise. We're very silly versus very serious and dark. Not to say horror can't be funny as well and campy at times, because there's an avenue for that as well. But when you think of horror, you think of the serious, the jump scares, the thrills, the psychological elements, and there's a lot of room if you have that comedic mindset to kind of poke fun at a lot of those things, which they do very smartly in a lot of these movies. So I'm excited to see where they take it and see what films they decide to kind of put their own creative twist and humorous spin on.
Yeah, I could definitely see something like Terrifier being brought in and having something like that. Maybe even Long Legs, because I think you could parody Nicolas Cage's character pretty well and make him just almost make him like the creepy old man from Family Guy.
You have to.
Like, you could kind of blend those together. So, yeah, there's a lot of new horror series that they could kind of go after to parody. They did kind of announce it showing their Scream character. So it looks like he's going to be back and everything in it. So yeah, there's a lot they could do, and I'm just curious to see how that type of silly over-the-top parody film will work nowadays, because like I said, they were huge 10, 15, 20 years ago, but it's been quite a while since we've had a really over-the-top parody film.
Yeah, and they've got the opportunity to make something really fun and really special. So I'm excited to see what they do with it for sure, because those films were so successful that you're wondering, could they work now? Is the audience there for it to be successful? And time will tell for sure, because like I said, the opportunity's there, and if they really can find that sweet spot of things to make fun of in a way that works, I think they've got the opportunity to have a hugely successful film in their hands.
I would love to see them also get back together and do a new version of In Living Color as well, because that was such a brilliantly done show. Maybe in Scary Movie 6 we could get Jim Carrey out of retirement and do some sort of parody with him, like maybe make him Nicolas Cage's character from Long Legs, and he's being really creepy, and kind of blend Fire Marshal Bill with, because I haven't seen Long Legs yet, so I can't remember what the character's name is stuff. But you could kind of have fun with blending all that together. But yeah, it's interesting to see that it's taken this long to get them back together to work on a project. They've all kind of gone their separate ways and doing a whole lot of different things. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And it's something that we talk about a lot, that there's films that you want to go in and have things to think about and do, and there's also films you want to go in and just turn your brain off and laugh and have fun, and that's what this series has been.
Yeah, and there's definitely an opportunity for them to refine that lane and be very successful with it, so we're very excited to see that when it comes out, and happy for them to get working on it for sure. One of the things that kind of came out of left field this week, and I don't think anybody was really expecting, Marvel just kind of came out and said, here you go, here's our entire TV slate for 2025. So we're getting a ton of Marvel content in 2025. For as much as they like to pump the brakes over the past, say, 2.5 years, they're hammering right back down on the accelerator in 2025, because the way they have the movies and the TV shows spaced out, we have pretty much something every month coming from Marvel in 2025.
Yeah, there are 9 Marvel projects coming out next year. So we got the 3 films, which Captain America, Brave New World, we have Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four. But yeah, for the TV side, it kind of kicks off here in December. So we've got like 10 more projects altogether, because the What If Season 3 premieres December 22nd of this year. And then when we move into next year, we've got the animated series, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, on January 29th. And one that we're both looking forward to a lot is Daredevil Born Again on March 4th.
So excited.
We finally have Ironheart on June 24th, and we have another animated series with Eyes of Wakanda on August 6th. The last animated series with Marvel Zombies in October of 2025, and it all ends with Wonder Man in December of 2025.
Yeah, you're not going to be short on any type of content, and I'm excited to, kind of dive into all these shows and review. I know it feels like we've been waiting for Ironheart to come out forever, because they filmed it, 3 years ago now? Like, this show had filmed by the time it comes out. Like, it's crazy that it's taken this long. We're finally getting it. It's kind of the same thing with Agatha All Along, that they filmed it a while back too, and it's finally seeing the light of day now, coming up, that we're getting ready to talk to later in this episode. But I've been more than ready for Daredevil. We've talked about that so much. There's a lot of exciting things coming up in 2025 that if you're into that sort of thing, you're gonna get your fair share of it for sure, because like I said, they just literally just came out and said, here's our entire slate that's coming. I'm excited for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. That seems like a fun animated show. A lot of times those shows are kind of sleeper shows because they're really well written, but not a lot of eyes get on them, so they only tend to last for like a season or two. I know I was a big fan of like the Avengers Assemble, like Disney show that they had recently, and some of the other Spider-Man comic, cartoons that had come out in the previous years as well. And it seems like they're just jumping right back in and just giving us all this crazy stuff next year.
I even had some rumors that the 90s Spider-Man the Animated Series might be getting a similar reboot to X-Men 97, yep. So we could potentially be seeing that in the next couple years as well. So that's kind of exciting if we get that reboot, because, yeah, X-Men 97 has done so extremely well for them. Why wouldn't they want to go back to Spider-Man the Animated Series? Because it was nearly as popular as X-Men was back in the 90s.
Yeah, and you can go back in our archives and check out our review of X-Men 97 and just how much we love that show. But I'm excited for all this stuff to finally see the light of day. And, I'm excited for Ironheart to see how that fits in the overall Marvel universe, and just all the obviously the 3 movies that are coming out next year are all going to be fantastic and huge, and I'm excited to see what all they give us moving forward, because now it's the pressure's on to kind of really get all this stuff and make it cohesive and blend together, but they do such a good way of mixing the animation with the live action. I think that it's going to be kind of a fun balanced thing where not everything needs to be watched, but if you're a fan of all of that type of content, it's all available for you to check out, and I'm excited to see what all comes out of it.
Yeah, and there's trailers released for, I think, every single one of these shows as well, so you can go on Marvel socials or YouTube and watch them all. And I did find it kind of funny because we got the trailer for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and people are like, he doesn't look very friendly because he literally webs a brick and slams it into somebody's head. Like, he just killed a guy. Like, that was kind of the jokes and everything on. Like, that's not a very friendly Spider-Man if he's knocking a guy out with a brick.
Yeah, but he's attacking a criminal, so it's okay, right? That's what heroes are for. But, no, it's going to be fun. There's so much content coming. Like, 2025, it's going to be very, very busy, and I'm excited to get to cover most of this stuff. And, we're not going to be short for episode ideas moving into next year. That's definitely for sure.
And moving over into Game of Thrones, so House of the Dragon Season 2 wrapped up this year. We won't see the next season for probably a couple years now, but it was released that they're looking at doing a Game of Thrones movie. So HBO originally was kind of against it. They didn't want to bring it into a film. They've been trying for a few years, but they've kind of had a lot of changes at the top, and now I guess they're ready to bring it to film.
Yeah, this is something that I think works really well in the film realm because, there's so much good stuff that you could take to make, wonderful TV shows that we've gotten so far, save for obviously the last couple seasons of Game of Thrones, but we're not gonna bang that drum today. But it depends on what story they want to tell, where they want to focus, who they want to have involved, but it absolutely will work as a movie, and I'm excited to see what direction they go. I believe George R.R. Martin's going to be involved in that as well, so he's going to have a hand in that too, which is a positive thing and what you want to see out of it. But yeah, that's all we know, that it's in the works, but we literally have nothing as far as, where they're going to focus that story.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of story they go with. Could that Jon Snow series we were supposed to get be turned into a film now? Or are they going to do something, maybe a prequel to the series? Because originally the showrunners wanted to end the Game of Thrones series with like 2 or 3 movies, but HBO nixed that. And again, we know how the series ended with some controversy, but they've wanted to do a film for a while. So if they can get a decent story that fits in that window, because we know these are very long, drawn out episodes and series and everything that can take a little bit to get the meat of the story and everything else. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how they do this in film, because I would expect it to probably be a 3-hour movie or something like that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to see where in this timeline does this movie fit in.
Yeah, because like I said, there's so many different places they can go with it, but until we get the actual outline of the story that they have in mind for it, it's just all speculation at this point. But it's exciting that they're willing to take it and bring it to the big screen, which I think could and will do very well once they decide to, put it together and put it out. I think there's still a huge audience for that, because you see House of the Dragon is doing extremely well as well. Obviously, Game of Thrones was one of the biggest TV shows of all time, especially for a non-network show to be as popular as it was on a premium service like HBO, and it was still insanely popular. Just goes to show you that the audience is there, and I think we'll be willing to go and see it in a theater experience, and I think there's potential for a really magical story and a good time in the theater to be had for that.
That's going to be an expensive movie.
Absolutely. God, could you imagine that? The amount of time you could film shooting like a fight scene for that, and the amount of money it's going to take to pull that off, but fix it within 30 plus minutes in a movie, just give me that like tomorrow, and I'm here for it, and I'm excited for it.
If you're into that kind of stuff, I love watching the behind the scenes that they do for House of Dragon, Game of Thrones, because some stuff like the CGI can be a little rough in some areas, like with the dragons and other stuff, but like some of the scenes where like the throne room in House of Dragon, you look at what they had practically, and you see how much was added and changed through special effects. I'm like, okay, 90% of this set didn't exist, but it looked real and fantastic. So it's really interesting to see that, of how much it goes to put in that, because there's, even with the action and everything else they do, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and it should make for a fun movie.
Absolutely. And so talking about movies we really enjoy, we got news this week that Takashi Yamazaki, who directed one of our favorite films last year, Godzilla Minus One, including the version of Godzilla Minus One Minus Color, which is absolutely fantastic, is coming back to direct another Godzilla film. Now, we don't have the knowledge yet if it's going to be like a follow-up to Godzilla Minus One, but he looks like he's returning to the world of Godzilla, which has me very excited because he did take so much care in Godzilla Minus One that he's getting another crack at it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that because he's actually he was the writer, director, and visual effects supervisor, and notorious that they haven't released it, but it was a 15 million or less budget, and it ended up being one of the most successful, or the most successful Godzilla movie ever made. It made over $100 million in the U.S., which it had never done before. Right. It set the biggest box office for Japanese film in the U.S. Like, it did so extremely well, and yeah, I absolutely love the movie. It's one of my favorites. To me, it's the best Godzilla movie that's ever been made because it took it serious, but also looked really good, and I highly recommend the black and white version. There was just something about that just really hit home. Like, I watched the original full color version, then we went back earlier in January when they released it to see the black and white, and it just kind of blew me away even more. Like, it was fantastic, and I love that he's back in the same roles that he had on the first one. So he's writing it, directing it, and will be the special effects supervisor. So to have him back on board, I really do hope this is a sequel to Minus One and continue what he started there and keep the budget small, keep everything like they did with the first one, because we have a lot of times where they'll do a movie where it had a really small budget and it does really well, and they greenlight a sequel, and then they give it $200 million budget, and it kind of loses what made the original special. So I hope they just continue on keeping it a little smaller, a little lower on budget, so they can keep that same feel and look.
Yeah, I think the budget will be a little bit bigger, but I hope it's not exponentially bigger. Because like you said, they did so well. This is a movie, like you said, not a huge budget, and it still won an Oscar for visual effects. That's insane. Like, it's beating out movies with 10, 15 times the budget, and are, just an incredible feat that, for the most part, didn't look like it had a, quote unquote cheap budget to it. Like, it was amazing. And, you talk about all these films with high budgets. I know it's not a news topic that we brought in this week, but you hear the rumors this week that, like, the next Mission Impossible movie is going to cost $400 million to make, that they're working on, and you're like, okay, it's probably going to look visually incredible, but you get just as high a quality of film for, $15-20 million, and probably double that maybe in the next film to make it $30 million, I think is more than fair. And the fact that I think he's back to do all of the roles on that, like, I think he's going to take the exact same level of care he did with Minus One and just give us another incredible Godzilla movie that I'm super excited for. And in this way, I kind of wish they would do it in reverse. Give us the black and white version of the next film first, and then give us the in-color version too, and see how we could compare it that way, and see if our interpretation of that movie changes because we see it in black and white versus in color the next time, and get it like kind of a reverse viewing experience for the next one.
And I want to throw in here, because it's kind of still in the monster realm and stuff, but Ridley Scott also announced that he is working on another Alien film, which has been kind of mixed with his Prometheus and the last two Alien films he did. Hopefully, as they see, because we do have a sequel to Alien Romulus coming, and he's doing one as well, so we'll see where his fits in the timeline. But I kind of hope he does a more modern one, or brings back to the original Alien or Aliens as well, because, Prometheus and those brought up a lot of different ideas, but it just didn't connect like his originals did. So I'm hoping and looking forward to what he could possibly do returning to Alien.
Yeah, you kind of hold out hope that it can get back to its former glory, but we're seeing in a lot of cases, and a little bit of a spoiler alert on how I'm going to feel about the film that we watched coming up. You get to a certain point where certain directors, when they come back to properties or start dealing with people that they've dealt with before, can't always capture that same magic and lightning in a bottle as, their careers progress and they get, several decades into their career. And you're starting to see that with some of these, legendary directors that are kind of not connecting in the way that they used to. And you're hoping that's not the case for Ridley Scott and Alien. But like you said, with the Prometheus films, I thought they were fine, but nowhere near on the level of the originals. And, the fact that he's coming back to this property is, do you take the lessons you learned from, having not as successful movies back to the ones that made you successful? Can you kind of marry those two ideas together? And, the jury's out, unfortunately.
And so moving on to Tomb Raider, so we do have another series, live action series that's in the work, and we did get that 2 actresses are in the running right now to play Lara Croft, and both of them are kind of interesting if they do it. Like, I don't think the last actress was bad with the reboot movie because it kind of mirrored the game, but I think it just missed out on getting the drama and the action right as the game, because the rebooted trilogy that they did was fantastic. They just didn't get the movie right. But we got Sophie Turner, of course, is known for Game of Thrones, was also in X-Men The Dark Phoenix, and not a lot of people want to talk about that she was in it. We also have Lucy Boynton from Sing Street, Miss Potter. They're in the running to play Lara Croft.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about either one of those actresses necessarily. Like, Sophie Turner's a fine actress. I haven't seen Sing Street or Miss Potter, so I can't really speak on Lucy Boynton necessarily, but I know there's a big push among, like, that fan base to have Haley Atwell play Lara Croft, potentially. Now, she is the voice actress of Lara Croft in the Netflix animated series Tomb Raider, so if you don't know who Haley Atwell is, she also plays Peggy Carter in the MCU. She's somebody that a lot of people are wanting to get a chance to play that live action Lara Croft. So there is some clamoring for that, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about either one of those 2 actresses necessarily taking on that role, because it's not the easiest of roles to nail. I mean, I think they slam dunk casted it with Angelina Jolie back in the day, even though the films weren't the best. Like, that's kind of a hard one to really translate into the film realm for whatever reason. Like, they really haven't gotten that right formula yet, I don't think, but it'll be interesting to see who they wind up finding for it.
Yeah, Sophie Turner's one that's just hard to kind of look at and see her as Lara Croft. Like, there is a look that you're used to with it. Like, yeah, Angelina Jolie had a good look for it, but she played a little older and it was more campy and stuff. So yeah, I'm really curious to see kind of what direction do they blend the campy with the more serious, or exactly how they're doing. This is being brought to us by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She's a good actress, and we'll see what kind of development and look that they give to the series, but it could be fun. Like I said, we thought we were getting a brand new film trilogy, but that film didn't do as well as they thought, so they're just going straight to series to kind of reboot it again, and we'll see if third time is a charm to get it right.
Yeah, for sure, because it's gotten several chances, but they don't seem like they've found that right formula for success yet. Maybe this series will give it a shot in the arm to need. I know we're getting ready to talk about, in a little spoiler alert, we're going to review the Netflix series, so excited to check that one out and see how it does. But a live action series could be the shot in the arm that it needs, and maybe move away from film, and it's better suited for TV, but the jury's still out on it for sure. So kind of transitioning over to the world of Lego, we've got 3 new live action / hybrid kind of films coming up. We had the wildly successful Piece by Piece, the Pharrell Williams film, the biography that's done really well. It's a really, really good story, and we're getting 3 new movies in the works coming up in the future.
Yeah, and we already got directors attached to them. So we have Jake Kasdan, Patty Jenkins, and Joe Cornish will direct the film. So I've really enjoyed them. I had fun with my kids, and I've had a lot of fun with the Lego games and stuff that they've put out around the movies, and around Marvel and The Hobbit and everything else. They've always been a ton of fun. We've got Lego Horizon coming out on PlayStation soon here. That looks really good as well. So I'm excited that they're coming back with some new Lego movies, because they've been a lot of fun, and we'll see just how much, because they announced them as like live action, but I'm like, it's live action hybrid. Like, you've got animation to get the Lego stuff right, but I'm curious if it's going to be some brand new movies, if they're going to be interconnected, if they're going to be separate stories that aren't connected. Do we have Chris Pratt and anybody else who was in the original come back to do it? So didn't get a whole lot of details on exactly how they're going with it, but they've been a lot of fun, so I'm looking forward to having some new ones to watch with the kids, but just watch myself.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, the information is very scarce at this point, but it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of marry the two, because it's not the easiest to do like a live action animated mix. They have the potential to be either pretty solid or really, really cheesy and really bad. So I'm hoping to lean more towards the positive and the the good potential for it. Patty Jenkins is a solid director, so I'm excited to see her get her hands on something like this. So we'll see what they give us, but who knows if they're even going to be connected? Like you said, you never know. They could just be brand new stories, and we have no idea what's happening yet.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what they do with this. It could be a lot of fun, but yeah, we don't have a whole lot of details, but we'll let you know when we hear more information. Sure. So moving on over to the world of sequels. So we've got everything that's being rebooted, remade, and everything else. So there was a Cliffhanger sequel that was announced that was happening with Sylvester Stallone, but he dropped out of it. And instead of killing the movie completely, they decided to go back and rewrite and redo everything. So now it's going to be a reboot of Cliffhanger starring Pierce Brosnan and Lily James. So Lily James is going to be our main character now, which, you know, Cliffhanger was kind of a cult classic. It's not the best. It's not the worst. It kind of had some issues. There's, of course, Ace Ventura, you know, parried it, and everything with everything was Nature Calls that they parried it. So it's one that's known, but I'm curious to see how that kind of movie works in 2024 and how, if they're going to take it really serious, if it's going to be kind of campy or over the top, but we'll see exactly how they do that. But it's kind of interesting. They were doing a sequel and they kind of redone it as a reboot. They must think it could be a new franchise and potentially a new franchise.
Yeah. And Cliffhanger is one of those movies that is notorious for like one major thing, right? It's the ending of the film kind of leaving people in suspense and surprise that, you know, kind of became a term for leaving things on an uncertain note necessarily because, you know, obviously when you hear things, it's left on a cliffhanger. Well, this is kind of where that originated from. And this is one of those films that you go back and talk to people that saw it. It's one of those first real movies that you hear about just kind of leaving people in disbelief when they walk out of a theater sometimes, and it's kind of notorious for that. So I'm excited to see what they do with it, see what direction they take with it. You know, Lily James is a great actress, so having her in that role is, you know, pretty solid, and we'll see what they do with it.
And Pierce Brosnan, he's been popping up in a lot of stuff that I didn't really think he'd ever do because he joined DC for the Black Adam movie and has been doing a lot of different things since, you know, his time as Bond. So I'm curious to see exactly what his role, if he's playing maybe the villain or if he's, you know, being somebody else, just to see exactly where he fits in with the film.
Absolutely, and excited to see that when it comes out for sure. So now we're going to jump into our film review of the week, which is the movie Here. It's Robert Zemeckis' film, which stars Tom Hanks and Robin Wright, in the first time that they're on film together since the movie Forrest Gump. So this is 30 years since Forrest Gump came out, so this is a long time to finally get those two actors back on film together. This is one that we were both super excited to check out because the concept of it visually just looked really cool. It's a movie that is centralized around one fixed point with an entire story being told around it in a way that, at least for me visually, was pretty stunning. The fact that they could transition between all these different inner working timelines of a story that are like taking place throughout the course of history. I don't know how I feel about that film going even to us doing the review, though.
Yeah, it's one I kind of left mixed on because I was excited because, yeah, okay, how are they going to do that? They've got the camera fixed in one place. We're telling, because of the house and the living room where majority of the movie takes place is the main area where everybody is. So I was like, how is having a single room going to work out? And it's very hit or miss because it had a great visual style. How they presented going between the different timelines was really neat. It was almost comic book panel style and everything. And it looked good overall, but the story it's not going to be for everybody. I feel like it's one that I need another viewing of to see exactly how I feel about it because the story was kind of choppy. Like, you have so many stories because, I mean, it goes all the way back to the dinosaurs to present day, and you have different families. I was kind of surprised, and we're going to have some light spoilers about the movie in here of how long into the movie it took to bring in Tom Hanks and Robin Wright's character before we really started following them along, because it was, I would say, almost 30 minutes into the movie before we got them in it. And their story was interesting, but there was a lot of stuff to me that just felt like, I don't know, like hokey, that, you know, when 3D movies in theaters are really becoming popular. So if it was filmed for 3D, they always kind of had stuff where they're throwing things at the screen and all that. And that's what it kind of felt like the camera angle was doing. They were purposely walking towards or standing directly in front of the camera. And it was kind of that effect like, hey, the camera's in this one place, let's just throw something right at the screen and have them standing there to do stuff. And it was also like, there was a lot of stuff that happened in that living room. I mean, you've got funerals and weddings and babies being born and just an insane amount of stuff that's happening in this living room.
Yeah, and I think I kind of understand the point that Robert Zemeckis was trying to make with this is if you think about life, right? We have our own perspective and our own, view of the world, but what if you view how the world works through one lens and one fixed point, which I kind of think is the point of this movie because you have the entire cycle of life happening right in front of this fixed point. You have the birth of family members in the living room. You have the death of family members in this living room, and it's not the same family throughout the course of history, but there are a couple generations of the same family that own this house. And some of the spoilery bits, Tom Hanks's character is like a second generation member of this house, and his father, who was played brilliantly, I think, for the most part, by Paul Bettany, giving us an American accent for the first time, which was very hilarious to hear, which we kind of poked fun at it when we left because it was a little jarring, just the type of way he presented himself. But the whole theme around this film, I believe, is the entire cycle of life is like the cycle of time, right? So you get from the very beginning, you get this fixed point, and there's nothing but green grass and tropics, and you see dinosaurs running off. You see for very conveniently, an asteroid or like a meteor hits the Earth, and we have the death of the dinosaurs all the way through indigenous folks, all the way through literally the course of history happening all around this house that had been around since 1800s probably, because you have this fixed point, you have this quote unquote historically famous house right across the street from it that's home to descendants of famous people and things like that. So you kind of get an idea of where this physically takes place. But I think that's kind of the point that Robert Zemeckis was trying to make here. I think that the getting everything on the same page was probably the hardest part of this film to get through.
You had to laugh when you're talking about Paul Bettany's accent and stuff, because this is pretty much the only thing we really talked about after the movie, because we try to leave it here to discuss that. He kind of sounded like he was doing Christopher Walken impersonation.
A little bit, yeah.
I heard Christopher Walken so many times. It kind of took me out of the movie a little bit because I heard it. And then he kind of gave me some Blast from the Past vibes, that Brendan Fraser movie and everything. But yeah, I agree with you. I think just trying to give you, like, it's like you're watching these lives from one fixed point, like you're just sitting here observing, kind of done almost like a play as well, like you're watching, like this is a play going on in front of you. But it does have a decent message about life and how quickly time passes and things passing by before you know it, and kind of capitalizing on life and doing things you want to do and not missing out on those moments. And it has a decent story, and I think the ending was decent at all, but I think it kind of took a little too long and jumped around a little too much with the past. Because some stories, like, you're like, all right, how did this about the recliner, that, and the airplane pilot and everything, how did that fully connect? Because it's kind of like they're telling the story of Tom Hanks and Robin Wright's characters, but it's mainly telling the story of this house, of this location. It's a character. But at times, it's like, did we really need to have all this jump in? Because this movie, I would say each scene and each time zone was probably no longer than 10 minutes a time. Some were a couple minutes or 5 minutes. So you're really jumping around a lot in this movie between all the different time periods. And you're really going and bouncing around a lot, which it wasn't hard to follow, but it just became a lot, like almost overloading you, because it's going back with Native Americans, and you got the Ben Franklin era, and you got the dinosaurs, and you have them going through like the 60s, like 70s, 80s, 90s.
You even get up to the most recent time period of like the 2020s, because you have, the last family that owns the house before they sell it, before Tom Hanks ultimately comes back to it. It had the, housekeeper that contracted COVID and passed away. Like there was, some of that incorporated into it as well. So it's all the way up until really modern times, but there are significant jumps in time in it. And it's an interesting movie to follow along with. It's one of those that I do think does need a second viewing to fully grasp everything they're trying to throw at you. But I think in a singular viewing, like I got the gist of the story fairly well. I just think the execution of it could have been better. Like you said, there's certain stories that you just wonder, like, was this necessary? Were there other people that own this house, maybe? Or it kind of feels like there's gaps in time that are like missing in some respects because, the house isn't always there. You get the building of the house and when it comes in, but do you get every single owner? And are some of these stories completely necessary for what you're trying to tell? I don't know, but that could be something that we're just missing the point on. And I would love to pick Robert Zemeckis' brain on this and just kind of get the full gist of the story from him. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's an all right film, but I think the execution of it could have been better. I did enjoy the storyline that was the meat of the movie, which was from, Paul Bettany buying the house with his wife, who was also played by the lead in Yellowstone. I'm blanking on the actress's name, but she's fantastic in it as well. She plays Rose, his wife, and that was really well done to the point where they have, Tom Hanks's character and the majority of his life kind of told in this film, like in this house. And I think that was done pretty well, that you kind of get the family dynamics of, father in the war struggling with work, his son also wanting to be an artist but struggling with work because he gets Robin Wright pregnant at 18 and they become very young parents. He kind of has to work and put his dreams on hold. So there's a lot of mixed messages in the movie that I think are fine, but it was just bringing it all together more cohesively that I think could have been a little better.
Yeah, I think it would have been better if it focused mainly on their family of, Paul Bettany and his wife and going through there, and then with Tom Hanks and Robin Wright's characters. Like, if it would have stuck to just them and gave us a little more depth and time with them, because like I said, I think the biggest problem with the execution was just like you were getting so little time with each group, because like I said, the scenes were 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, and then you'd cut to another group and it's 2, 3, 5 minutes, and then you're jumping. So like you're jumping so much, it's kind of hard to get fully invested in until like the very end. I think they did a good job at the very end, kind of getting you to care about where these characters had gone, but it took a very long time to get there. And it also had some rough CGI work. It had more CGI in it than I kind of expected. Like there's some scenes you laughed at because they were kind of over the top, but it was also the CG was really rough, of like a kid falling, and sometimes when the vehicles are passing in the background they looked like kind of rough, and at times it looked like they were standing in front of a green screen and stuff. So that kind of took me out a little bit. Like, it is a really interesting premise, but it just kind of missed the mark on really getting you to care about these characters. So in the end, here was an ambitious type of film. It had a unique idea behind the camera angle and everything else. We got some decent performances out of, Tom Hanks and Paul Bettany and Robin Wright, but in the end, it kind of just failed to get you to really care about the characters, because it kind of made you want to care more about the house and location, and it just jumped around a little bit too much for me. So in the end, I would probably put this in the 6 to 7 range. Like, it's not a terrible film, but it's one I really want to kind of rewatch to see exactly how I felt about it. Like, it has a good message overall, but I just don't think the presentation really nailed what he was trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. The time jumping in sporadic spurts, like it was, kind of, it forces you to pay attention, which is fine. That's what I want to do in a movie anyway, but I still feel like the execution could have been better. I agree. I put it more of a 6 to 6.5 myself. And, that's, I think, a fair grading for this movie. Like, it's not a bad film by any means. It's not going to wind up on my best movies of the year by any stretch of the imagination. But I think for what it was fine. It had the concepts of a really, really interesting and unique film. And in the end, I do think we got that. So I think they were successful in making it kind of a unique film, at least visually, the way the story was presented. But I think it fell a little flat on the execution, save for some really fine performances notwithstanding. It's not the best performance of Tom Hanks' career by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he did fairly well with what he was given. In the end, it was nice to see Tom Hanks and Robin Wright together on film again. They were absolutely amazing. Their chemistry in Forrest Gump was spectacular. It's one of the greatest films of all time, and it's exciting to see them back on the screen again and have some of that chemistry and that magic that they had 30 years ago back in this film. But at the end of the day, that's kind of the ranking that I'm willing to give it.
So here is in theaters now. You can go check it out and see what you thought about it. Like I said, it's not going to be a film that's for everyone. Like, you can really have different opinions on this just depending on how you got. Like, it's not a bad film. overall, I just think it kind of missed the mark exactly. Like it could have been a little more focused to be able to get it done right.
Absolutely.
So moving on over to our TV breakdown of the week, we have Agatha All Along Season 1. So this picks up pretty much right after WandaVision ended. So you've got Agatha is been trapped again in, the Scarlet Witch's fantasy town and stuff. So she thinks she's a cop, that she's doing all this stuff. And this was a really great series for Catherine Hahn to show her different levels, because she's kind of taking it very serious as a cop, but you also get to, we'll have some spoilers about this show as well, because we want to get into the meat of it, and you've got to talk about the twist and everything else. But like when she's playing the cop, she's kind of very serious and talking about, but she's trying to give that old-timey detective type of serious acting, which is funny. It's meant to kind of be a little over the top, and then you get to see the flip side of a lot of this stuff. So you see how it's actually taking place in real life, and it's like hysterically over the top. But that's kind of best way to kind of talk about this film or this series, is that it was a bit over the top and campy at times, and it had a little bit of a horror and a lot of twist in it. But I had a lot of fun with this. Like, I think Catherine was so fantastic. Joe Locke was great. I think everybody did a great job, and it did a great job of presenting the story in a good way that we got to have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and this has one of my favorite kind of like character reveals in the entirety of the MCU at this point, because I thought it was so well executed. So like the way this kicks off, like you said, when she comes to the realization that she is Agatha Harkness again, like she's not this cop that she thinks she is. Once that kind of wall comes down, they set out on this journey to kind of gain Agatha's powers back. So she's been rendered powerless. She doesn't have her magic anymore. And she comes across this teen played by the wonderful Joe Locke, who is absolutely fantastic in this show. And they set out to go on the Witches' Road, which is kind of a trial for witches to kind of prove their worth, to get the one thing they want, right? That's the lore of the Witches' Road, is to form your coven and go on this journey. And if you survive the Witches' Road, you get what you want in the end. And, they form this coven of amazingly different personalities and a ton of fun. And there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of horror elements in this show. There's a lot of heart in it. There's a lot of really fun, interesting stories that each of these witches kind of go through that's still, hyper-focused on Agatha Harkness and her journey to kind of like, get her powers back. And she's kind of willing to do whatever it takes. And there's a lot of trials and tribulations that they face along the way. But some really spectacular casting in this. I wanted to give a special shout out, of course, to Aubrey Plaza, who plays Rio. And not going to spoil what winds up happening for her character, because that's a really cool reveal. But it does have the reveal of one of my favorite reveals in the entirety of the MCU, and that's the reveal about midway through the season where you find out that who the teen is, because he's referred to as the teen for like half of this show. And then you finally get the reveal of who he is, and he's Billy Maximoff. He is Wiccan, who is the son of Wanda, and he is this magical being who I'm very excited to see what the future holds for this character, because he's going to have a big role in the MCU moving forward.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, because you've kind of got two main stories. So you've got Agatha saying she needs to go through the Witches' Road to get her powers back, because of all the witches around have kind of lost their powers and they're trying to get it back. But, with Billy, he's looking for his brother, and he feels that going on the Witches' Road is what, if you survive and make it through the Witches' Road, it'll kind of grant you a wish. And, his wish was going to be able to find his brother. And, that kind of was done really well, because you get to have a lot of fun that the trials on the Witches' Road are a bit of a parody of different things. Sure. We kind of because we got Deborah Jo Rupp in there as Mrs. Hart, and there was one kind of camera angles and cuts that looked a lot like that 70s show when they're in the basement and they're cutting around to people. And of course you got a Parks and Rec reunion with Catherine Hahn and Aubrey Plaza back together, which was a lot of fun. And they parodied Disney with Maleficent and others showing up and that. So they had a lot of fun kind of poking fun at themselves and other series and everything else. And I think it did really good. Like, Catherine Hahn showed so many levels, because you got to get a lot of the backstory of how Agatha ended up where she is. And, you were wondering, was this series going to be something that, are we going to see her in a different light? Is she going to turn good? Is she going to stay bad? How exactly we're going to do it? And it gets a decent payoff in the end that, we see how her journey began. And there's a lot of different things that have a lot of depth to them of how it's happening. And when it gets to the big reveal, this twist at the end, and you see how everything came together, and you realize, okay, so like, was none of this done, real? Was this in real life? Was it all trickery and all that? And you get some decent reveals at the end. And I will have to say, you do get to see Wiccan in his comic accurate suit, and he looked fantastic. And there's some Easter eggs if you want to look closely at his cape. You'll get some Easter eggs in that too, that it has some nice references and some really good detail that they did in that.
Yeah, for sure. It's 9 episodes, and for my money, episode, I want to say 5, which is the Billy reveal, and episode 8 are like the real highlights of this season. And episode 9 is where I kind of take a little bit of umbrage with the show, and not so much in the fact that it's the content, it's the placement of the content in episode 9. So when you get to the last episode 8 ends on this. He comes to this crazy realization, and it leaves us on this like cool cliffhanger, kind of like we're about to get a big reveal in episode 9, which we do get. There's some cool things that come out in episode 9, but a good chunk of that last episode is so much backstory for Agatha that I think probably could have served better. I think this could have been served better in 8 episodes instead of 9, where you take that ending and truncate it at the end of episode 8, and I think it's a perfect episode. The ending of 9, slap it onto the end of episode 8. Perfect ending for a series, but so much of episode 9 is filled with just this backstory of Agatha and her, birth of, her son Nicholas, and that journey to get her to where she is at the beginning of the season, that I think could have been sprinkled out a little bit more throughout the entire series and kind of made each episode a few minutes longer maybe, and really could have filled in that story along the way that you get so much of it in that last episode. And I wonder if it was necessary, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of agree. They could have taken her backstory and put it in maybe episode 7 and take the ending and stick it with episode 8 and kind of end it there. But it wasn't a bad finale, but it did kind of bogged it down a little bit, because we were also left with some more questions about who the father is. Did she do this all through magic? Was there actually a father? How everything went, and it kind of went more into the relationship as well that she had with Rio, but that could have been brought up a little earlier. And It does leave the series in kind of a weird, interesting place. Like, I won't spoil that. It gets very comic accurate with stuff with Agatha, but I think the execution of the look of that wasn't done very well. But I think hopefully wherever we see, if we get Agatha season 2, or if they show up next in the Vision Quest series, or exactly where these characters show back up, because it leaves you on a cliffhanger that you're kind of, well, there's got to be more to the story, because it didn't end. It left it open for more story to be told.
For sure. And like you said, we don't know yet if we're getting season 2 or not, or if this is going to be a one-off. They set up for what potentially could be a season 2 if they go that route, because Billy does kind of set off on this journey. And if you're diving deep into news and stories like we are, Wiccan is going to be playing a big part in the Young Avengers series that's coming, which, if you're keeping up with all the MCU stuff, you saw, Miss Marvel kind of start this recruiting of a team with, recruiting, Haley Steinfeld's, Hawkeye character as well.
Kate Bishop.
Yeah, we have Kate Bishop showing, and then you've got all of these younger, powered, individuals that are going to form this younger Avengers team that is coming at some point. We just don't know when it's going to actually come together and how it's going to completely come together, but he's going to have a big role in that as well. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for that character in the MCU and where they go from there. But yeah, at the end of the day, Agatha season 1 is a fantastic show. I really enjoyed it. Catherine Hahn is outstanding in it. She, like you said, she has so many different layers, and they do walk a really fine line of you wanting to root for Agatha and just seeing how evil and self-centered she really is throughout so much of this. And it kind of, in a lot of fun ways, kind of parodies itself while also taking itself seriously. And it does a really good job of having that balance and walking that line. If I had to give it, a rating for the entire season, I'd say it's a solid 7 out of 10. Like, there's things that they don't do the best, but I think when they get it right, they get it really right. And I think, they've got potential to build on that if they were to decide to do a season 2.
I agree. I put it around a 7.5 to 8. Like it was a solid series. It was done well. There's some stuff that could have been done a little bit better, but I agree that Kathryn Hahn was fantastic in it. Like, she went from slapstick to evil and dark to over the top to back. Like, she had to play herself in so many different ways through different time periods and through different with the trials that every time they step in a trial they change clothes and change everything else. Like, she had a very deep, layered, complicated performance, and she did fantastic, but everybody around her did fantastic as well. So yeah, I would put Agatha All Along season 1 around a 7.5 and 8. Like, I think it was a solid season, and I look forward to seeing more of it.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see if it gets a season 2, but you can see Agatha All Along season 1 on Disney Plus right now. Can't recommend enough. Go checking it out. Leave us a comment on our YouTube video or come to any of our socials. Let us know what you think if you saw the season as well, and we'd be excited to have that conversation with you.
So we want to give a special shout out to the Time Shifters podcast. So this group of guys that we met at the Cincy Comic Expo this year, they have a podcast where they discuss film and TV from past and present. They've done interviews. They have an audio only podcast for now. They're talking about doing video in the future, but we hope that you check them out. We do have a promo to play for them here, so you'll listen to that. And I hope you go into the description. You'll find links to their website and their audio podcast to check them out. Go give them, a like, a subscription, let them know that you came from us, and I hope you check them out. But this is the Time Shifters podcast.
Life gets busy, and there's always new movies and theaters or shows on one streaming service or another.
Too many, some would say.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to see everything when it first comes out.
So we all become time shifters.
On the Time Shifters podcast, we discuss and review films and television from past and present.
And sometimes from the future.
We also share some discussions with filmmakers and actors, talk about genre news, and share some occasional convention coverage.
So tune in to the Time Shifters podcast.
Available wherever podcasts can be found or by visiting timeshifterspodcast.com.
So moving on to what's coming up this week, we have, two movies that just worked really well paired with each other. It's Heretic and The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. So it's kind of you got a religious film about creating a Christmas pageant that's really important to this town. And then you have Hugh Grant starring in a kind of psychological thriller horror film that looks really interesting. We've heard good things about it, but yeah, they couldn't be any more different from each other.
Yeah, I love when they have these two opposing forces showing up in theaters at the same time. It always creates for a fun dynamic of what's the audience going to be for this one versus what's the audience going to be for that one. Is there any overlap? Probably not going to be a ton of overlap for people that watch these two films, but I'm really excited to check out Heretic. The trailers for it look really good. You get Hugh Grant in kind of this darker psychological thriller type film. Excited to check that one out for sure.
I mean, you're not going to have a double back-to-back viewing of both of these films together?
It would be really interesting to see what my mindset coming out of each of those together would be.
Especially if you saw Heretic first and then you went into a lighter religious family movie. Like, it would
probably be a little bit of a palate cleanser for sure.
Why isn't anybody dying?
Yeah, I know. Like, we just got this, and now you have this lighthearted, warm, fun, friendly family Christmas film.
And moving on Demand, we have A Different Man starring Sebastian Stan out on November 5th. That's one I'm looking forward to see. Didn't get to see, I don't think it had a big or did have a theatrical run. I don't remember if it actually came out. If it did, it didn't show anywhere near us because it's, he's playing a character that has this facial deformation and has this disability, but he kind of gets work done and kind of moves into more of a thriller type of mystery film, that drama that looks kind of really good. It's another kind of just really different. He's taking on so many different roles that you didn't really expect him to be Tommy Lee and Donald Trump and everything. And now you've got this film that I am really looking forward to checking out.
Yeah, he's on quite a run right now, and it's exciting to see him stretching his legs as an actor and kind of taking on all these various different roles that so far and everything I've seen that he's done has been really well really well acted and really well done. So I'm excited to see this one in for sure.
And we also have The Outrun out on November 5th, so I haven't really heard much about that film either, so it's another one that went quickly to on demand. And we also have one that's, fun for the whole family to say. My Old Ass is out on November 7th, so this is an Aubrey Plaza movie where she kind of visits her younger self, and she's helping guide. And it looks like a really fun and interesting movie, but it's one of those movie titles like, okay, that's an interesting way to approach the movie, because it's one that not everyone's going to look at that name, and it probably turned a lot of people off just because of the name. Like, it's a very bold naming of the film, but it looks like it would be a lot of fun. And Aubrey Plaza, she's just, after Parks and Rec and everything, she's had so many different varying roles. She went into the, this is, Agatha All Along was kind of her second stint in Marvel, because she did a TV series that was, it lasted a few seasons, but it wasn't, Legion wasn't really seen that much.
Sure.
Like, not people talk about it, but she's been in a couple things at Marvel, and now she's, doing kind of these roles. She always turns up into something really interesting.
Listen, you're not going to be the only one that gets to say my old ass on this podcast. I want to get that in too, just to have my own sense in it, just to say that I said it too. But yeah, that one looks like it's a lot of fun. We saw the trailers for it, and we're kind of hoping we got to see it in theaters, but we didn't get to make it to theaters to see it. But this is when I plan on checking it out. Looks like a lot of fun, really funny, and has a potential, really heartwarming message of, if you could go back and kind of guide your younger self, what would you tell your younger self? And it kind of look like they explore that in this film, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, over on the TV side, we have a couple series finales hitting. So we have Arcane on Netflix. Season 2 is going to be the final season. This animated series based on the video game property is done extremely well, and it's really well made. So I'm looking forward to see how that series wraps up. And then one that has had a lot of controversy around it, we got the second half of Season 5 of Yellowstone. So, there's been talks that they might come back for Season 6 and continue it, but at this moment, this is still kind of the finale of Yellowstone. You don't have Kevin Costner returning, and we'll see how this second half of the season kind of wraps up that series.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly popular show, super popular, but it's just as much known now for all the behind-the-scenes drama between the actors and the creator of the show, and, the back and forth between most of the cast and Kevin Costner, and between Kevin Costner and, the creator of the show as well, kind of having their spats publicly. But this is a show that has some very wildly successful spinoffs as well, but it's exciting to see how they wrap this show up, giving everything that's gone on behind it, what they put on camera to kind of, if this is the final part of this series, what happens. I know there has been talks of them coming back, moving forward with some of the other Dutton characters in a season 6, but the jury's still out. But excited to see where they go with it on November 10th when the next season, or the next half of the season, finally starts.
And Arcane will drop on November 9th, the day before, so you've got a couple kind of big shows back to back, depending on what you're into.
For sure. And that's going to do it for this week's episode. Once again, we can't thank you enough for your continued support. Next week, we will be reviewing the Hugh Grant film Heretic, as well as Season 1 of Tomb Raider, The Legend of Lara Croft, the Netflix animated series. Excited to talk about those next week. But until then, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you next time.